The custom group summon is here, but for real this time. First, we should go over whether or not it's worth summoning. The first thing to keep in mind is that Laya is due for her rerun soon, and she's definitely still a good unit, and her artifact especially is insane. I plan on getting 2 more copies of it, and bottling 1 to max. Might just go for SSS Laya and see how many artifacts I get in between. I would say if you had to pick between rolling Laya banner and the custom group and you could only do one, I would pick Laya's banner. There's also people saying that there's a call upcoming, which people say this every other week. Whether or not there's a call upcoming doesn't really matter, I would say. It's generally good practice to sit on a pity, just in case. But you can do whatever you want with that. So, we should also talk about, even if you don't summon, you can still use the banner for the powder shop. So you could do something like, let's say we put 3 limiteds, Soul Consolation, Guiding Light, and let's just say Prayer of Solitude on there. You can do a single roll, and then all 3 of these artifacts will be available in the powder shop. So that is one way to use this banner, even if you don't plan on summoning. And for that, generally, you should target limiteds, because it feels kind of bad to spend 240 for a non-limited artifact. But if it's like your first copy of Bird's Eye View or something, which could be really, really useful, that's a consideration. First, before we get into the units, let's talk about the ones not available. These are all of the limiteds that haven't had a rerun yet, as well as the non-limiteds that just haven't been out long enough yet. Festivita, Frida, no one cares about Fenris, but Renewed Will is unfortunately not available. Schneal, Afternoon Soak Flan, Young Senya, Fene, and Tori, with Tori's banner technically still being up, and it might be up for longer depending on when you open the game, are all not available. So for what is available, there is no S tier because Laya is the S tier. If you do plan on rolling, I would say Crow is definitely a really good pickup. His buffs made him a really good mitigation knight and really fun to use, and also he's tied with Holy Sack, which is a really good artifact. It does need plus 30 for consistency, but the artifact is both good and very, very fun. There's also Diane, who I'm kind of bumping up here a bit just because she's limited. I'm not too sure how well she works. I've heard people say that she's good. I've heard people say they don't use her, or she's like whatever. But she's definitely usable, at least I would say, and she is limited, and there's no other way to get her, so she's definitely a good unit worth considering. Mort is still insanely strong, and definitely worth picking up if you didn't grab him from the second selective. There's also Knockwool. Knockwool, great opener, a bit inconsistent, if anything, but still a great opener. And her artifact is not super like insane or anything, but it's nice to have, especially if you don't have Confile. Can be useful in certain PvE content. There's also Celine. Celine is good, nothing insane, but her artifact is really nice to have. You do need plus 30 for consistency with the attack buff, but even just the CR push alone can be fun to work around with. And then there's also Genua. Not super strong as before, but still a solid DPS if you need it. For the artifacts, there's Soul Consolation, and Lulucar is kind of usable as far as I know, but Soul Constellation is the main consideration here, especially if you don't have a lot of Guardian Ice Crystals. This is a really good, like, replacement artifact for your Soul Weavers. And there's also Guiding Light, especially if you are a cleaver or somebody who plays fast. You definitely want at least a few copies of Guiding Light. And I would say, in general, keeping at least a couple on hand is nice, just in case there's a ranger that comes out that you want to play around with. Secret Stice, still really nice. Great bruiser artifact for warriors. And then there's also Bird's Eye View. Cleave artifact for people who want to use Frida in Tabellion, or just for more souls in general. And then we have the B tier. I would say, really, like, you generally shouldn't be looking below A tier. Unless you have like everything already. But there's Alencia. Alencia is I just have her below Mort. She also pairs pretty well with Young Senya and is a decent unit by herself, but nothing super standout, and she's definitely worse than Mort, I would say, so she's down here. Rowana is a bit weird. She's not as strong as before in both PvE and PvP, but her kit is very simple yet also very effective. She kind of just pops up here and there, like every once in a while. I just find a comp that I want to use her in for Arena. Bree kind of took her job in Ice Expedition, but she's definitely nice to have on hand. I wouldn't super prioritize her, but she's definitely nice to have around just in case. And I forgot to put it in, but I don't think our artifact is bad. I think Touch of Echoes is really nice for PvE and AI PvP. And then there's Prey of Solitude, which is largely here because it's limited, to be honest. You use it on HP stacking warriors that have extra attacks. And that's mainly Alencia, but it's limited and there's not really another way to get this. And the HP boost is also really nice. Elbrus, great artifact. There's just not too many users for it right now. It's like Abyssal Euphine and ML Landy, but ML Landy is, I can't really say dead, but definitely not as good as before. Still a great artifact though. It's just, I feel like its users are a bit weak right now, but definitely if more knights that can use it will come out, this artifact could go up. And then we have the C tier. So Elena is nice. I wouldn't say she's insane or anything, so she's down here, but she's definitely just nice to have around if you need her. Galilius is a limited. She's not as strong as before either, but can be nice to have. Her artifact is also really nice if you want to play some FRS stacking thieves. Not really too many of them, but this is a really good FRS tactic for those thieves. Eligos is really, really good. He doesn't really belong down here, but if you're looking at me for advice, you probably can't gear him. He's very, very hard to gear. His artifact's also not bad, but you need plus 30 for consistency. And then there's Star of the Deep Sea, Fairy Tale for a Nightmare, and Champion's Trophy. So all three of these are limited artifacts. This one is tied to Caesarea, who I actually use a lot in Guild War, but I don't think she's like super good or anything. I just kind of like using her. And the artifact kind of has a common misconception where people say you need plus 30. Technically you don't, because even at plus 30 it's still only 85% consistent, but getting this up is definitely nice just because it's an RNG proc. Fairy Tale for a Nightmare. Some mages might use this. It really just depends if you have a unit you want that uses this. And then Champion's Trophy is an alternative artifact for Emelpera. I've heard people say it's her best in slot, but I don't know enough about that unit to confirm that. And then Holiday Euphine is a unit that exists. I see people say that she's like good every once in a while, but I never really see anybody actually do anything with her. Rise of a Monarch is Emily's artifact. I have it down here because Emily is somehow not as strong as before since the last tier list I did like a few weeks ago, but also FCC got taken out back. So Cecilia imprints are worthless now, but this is still a consideration if you really want an artifact for Emily. And then there are these two who I always like to mention as being completely useless, just because Landy is a PvE unit, but there's really no need to use her anymore. You don't need her for Abyss. You can just get through Abyss without her. You don't need her for Raid. You don't need her for Expeditions. She's just a complete luxury unit that people only really use because they already have her invested. There's really nowhere in the game, I would say, where she is genuinely best in slot. And then there is Seaside Bologna, who I technically cannot call complete trash, but I'm going to call her trash anyways, because I did start doing a 3-man Wyvern 13 one-shot that was like very, very consistent, like high 90s, I would say, last time Rift ended, but that's not really like a real consideration. This unit is very overrated for PvE. The only places she gets used are Wyvern 13 one-shot, where you can use Clarissa or Arya to about the same effect. And you can use her for Queen Auto, but there's like any bruiser works pretty much for Queen Auto. Fire Expedition, you just use dual attackers now. Yeah, like the only thing she's used for really is the 3-man Wyvern 13 auto, which is like, yeah, it's not worth it. Anyways, that is it for the tier list. It's definitely happening this time for sure, because it's in the patch notes. And I would say definitely, Laya, make sure that you're able to get this unit.